It's showtime. It's Tuesday with Ron and Chris, and there will be no time wasted trying to sell you stuff or anything else. This is our conversation about various topics. Viewers are encouraged to participate with questions, whatever you guys want. We've got a lot to go over this week, so um, I don't even know where to start it. I got so many things to say. Why don't
I
you?
know.
Why don't you start off, Ron?
Okay. Well, I want to start off with the good, but I want to harp a little bit later on after we go back and forth with more harping on some of the losses I had because this was an exceptional weekend. Uh, I usually go 1, 2, and 3 stars. I had a pair of 4-star plays this past week. As people could have guessed, I love the situation with the Chicago Bears, although I thought the Rams were quite impressive, to be honest. And the Colts were my other 4-star play. So the two 4-star plays really worked out. And there were a number of reasons why. We don't have to rehash that. Also, pretty satisfied with how the Kansas City Charger game went. Very satisfied with the automatic play on the Saints +3. There's no reason in that series anybody should ever be a 3-point favorite. The Saints blew it. Let's face it, the Saints were the better team and they blew the outright win. And I think the other one was Vegas. When Vegas got to 2.5 and a soft 3, anytime you can go against Deshaun Watson and Deshaun Watson has to give points on the road, that's a problem for me too. So love those 5 plays. I will talk a little bit later. I want to emphasize how I felt about the 3 losers that I have. But what about you, Chris?
Um, it was a pretty bizarre week, quite frankly. I'm happy and I'm disappointed at the same time. I did okay, but I still did some. I still missed some lines. I did not read a few markets properly, which I take very seriously. I don't think there's anything more important than knowing how to read a market. And I trying to. I just expected lines to move a little differently than they did. I think that there's been a shift in the market that wasn't there over time, where you used to be able to depend on lines getting to certain points and they don't, or you used to depend that they would stay at a certain number and they don't. I think overall the market is smarter than it used to be, even though I'm not sure closing line value means anything. I do know that I saw somebody had tweeted out that this is the worst year in 20 years for games that are getting over 50% of the action. Now, I don't think 51% is anything to measure anything by, but nevertheless, at least somebody's tracking it. I didn't anticipate the Chargers line to go down to 6.5. I thought the Baltimore line should go to 3. It never went to 3. I thought the Lions line might go higher. I thought well, I don't. That was the main thing. I thought the Green Bay Packer line would go higher. I was surprised that didn't go to a strong 3. I don't understand how the line was higher before they announced Love in for sure than after. So when they announced him in, the line didn't do anything. And then the line kind of sagged down. So that was really strange. So there's just a lot of strange things that go on. But you said you had some things that didn't go your way?
Yeah, well, in response to the line movement, the one thing that once I recalculated the Kansas City Charger line based on who was playing and who wasn't, I could only get to 5 in that game. So I actually was, and I think I tweeted it out before the game. I was actually shocked that the line stayed above 7. So I was kind of different on you on that. Even with the offensive line injuries and the suspension and so on, Kansas City had, it just didn't make sense with the way Harbaugh had a chance to exploit Kansas City's run defense, even though they didn't, except for the beginning of the game. I was really surprised at that particular line. I'm always surprised when New Orleans Atlanta hits 3. So I thought the line movement was a little strange in some of the games based on what my value was. The 3 games, I do want to talk about the 3 games that I lost and why I don't really have any regrets on it. But I think you learn lessons from the games that you lost, even though, as it turns out, they were my 3 lowest played games. Also want to say that once I finished my Green Bay, Minnesota analysis, I was hoping and praying that Willis was going to play in that game because I had such a downgrade for Willis against that Minnesota defense that I was willing to lay what it would take to go with Green Bay in that game. To go with Minnesota in that game against him. When Love was announced out, I thought that the line was relatively correct, and I passed on the game, and I don't regret it because I thought Love could hit some big plays against that kind of aggressive defense where Willis would not be able to hit those big plays. That was my analysis of that game. 3 games I lost, and I mentioned one of them to you and to others. Philadelphia did not have standalone revenge, but they had that playoff revenge. I probably was stubborn in keeping the Philadelphia play without its 2 wide receivers and without Lane Johnson on the offensive line. But my handicap was such that I just didn't think that Baker Mayfield could maintain the level of play that he's been maintaining. And to be honest, I think that's a problem on my end. And I'm willing to admit it, that I need to elevate Baker Mayfield a little bit more because he's achieving in my eyes. And I want to say that publicly because that's important to me to notice when I'm making a mistake in a particular area. And
we appreciate you coming out with that.
Yeah, and I agree with what you said prior to the game, Chris, about something's wrong with Philly, because something is wrong with Philly. It resulted in a reduced play, but I still played that particular game. The loss on Arizona, I realize Arizona is not a great defense, and that's why part of my play was in a money line parlay that lost because I didn't want to lay the points, and part of my play was at -3. I am concerned about Arizona's defense. Still, never in a million years did I think that Arizona would score just 14 points at home against Washington's defense, which was rated bottom 3 in the league by me coming in and still has its problems. I credit both Minnesota and Washington as really overachieving where I have to make some adjustments. I do not have any regrets on the Arizona play. I was just stunned that they put up just 14 points, and I'll learn by that. And the other one is a Buffalo-Baltimore thing that I want to get into a little bit later. I had, it never got to 3, so technically it wasn't going to be a play for me. But I manipulated the parlay with Arizona. Interesting that both sides lost, so I could have a little bit of action on Buffalo. And then I had the second half play on Buffalo, which after the trick play imploded as well. So I did lose a little over a unit actually on the Buffalo. And I don't really have any regrets on that, but I want to talk about Baltimore in more detail a little bit later on. I know Baltimore needed the game, but this was an opportunity for a really good team to make a statement with Buffalo, and they didn't make it. No regrets on those 3 plays. I just want to publicly say out loud what I learned from that.
Well, getting to your Arizona, Washington, I didn't have anything on that game. It was just too close. Arizona falling apart every second half. Something strange with that team. They should be performing better than they are. So I don't know what to think about that team. And Washington obviously is, breaking records. How long can they keep that up?
Yeah,
we know from past history, teams come down hard. So is this going to be the week or not? Philadelphia, I'm just ready to shoot myself because what did I say? I hate teams that quit. That team quit last year, And here I am betting them this week, and they looked awful. They really were pathetic. And it's I'm following the model, and I really thought that they could just get by in that situation because Tampa Bay had been getting by. Tampa Bay had been the lucky team, and I just thought that Philadelphia could slide by here. And it's just infuriating to have your money on a team where the players are so inconsistent, and you've had all the warning signs. And if you look back, I believe Philadelphia is like 3-8 over the last 11 games or something like that. And they're thinking this team's going to the Super Bowl. Wake up. This team's going nowhere. Unless some miracle happens, this team is just mediocre. And they're going to show signs of life every now and then they're going to lay a turd, and you're going to take it, or whether you like it or not. I mean, just look at the history. So it's very frustrating on that accord. Minnesota, Green Bay. I thought Minnesota would win outright. I kind of hoped Love would be in the lineup because I wanted more points just for insurance purposes. Mm-hmm. Saints, I had the Saints. I got the +2.5. I lost the money line, won the teasers. So the model seemed to have a lot of decent indicators. So I'm kind of pleased with that, because I think the scariest thing when you have a model like mine, you're doing yours by manual adjustments, and you're never going to come in at these extremes. I'm doing it by stats, and sometimes I get little shocks to the system, especially the very first model or two of the year. It's sort of like you're like afraid to look at it. It's I did want to go into how there's two things I want to talk about. Actually, there's a bunch of stuff I want to talk about. We had that push on that 5 on Dallas and the Giants to start off the week. And people are surprised that this 5 is so important. But teams are, when they get on 5, they're trying to get to 3. If they're on 8, they kick a field goal, they're on 5. 5 has become, as important as the 4. And now you've had like a little morphing of important numbers and such. And it's, I'm finding myself far more resistant to laying points than I ever have before. Even you yourself use some money line parlays. And I'm to the point of, I don't give a shit what the money line is. I'll lay the best price there is, but there's a lot of situations I'm not going to lay points anymore on, as long as I'm getting a good money line. Remember, it's all a matter of price. I mean, you can't just bet a money line blindly if you're paying too much for the money line. So you've got to know the values of the money line. So with that in mind, I'm just, on that game, I started off the week with 2 3-team parlays. I had Dallas in both of them. I had Houston money line in another one, Cincinnati money line in another one. The Houston one obviously saved me, and I had that tied into the Lions on Monday night. I didn't want to lay points in any of those 3 games, and it worked out into a situation where, I've got some nice plus prices. I've got a +235 or 239 parlay, and I've got a +199 parlay going into the Lions. And so what do I want to do in that situation? What I wanted to do is I want to tease my way out of it. I want to lower, since I'm getting more than 2-to-1 on everything I put in. I want to leave myself a little bit of hedging involved, so to speak, and try to carry some value forward with that. So I teased. I did 2 teasers, one smaller one with the +11.5 on Seattle on a 17 that pays plus money with a couple of teams this week. And then I did the +14.5 on Seattle into a couple of teams for more. And obviously that worked out. And I even hedged the hedge at halftime. I shared, you know, all of this with people, and I advised at halftime. I said, take the Lions plus 1.5 or one, because you're kind of protecting yourself against that plus 14.5 on Seattle. So take a third or a quarter of that plus 14 wager and kind of protect it a little bit, because you're just protecting a hedge of a hedge. It wasn't looking, a sure thing that the Lions were going to cover. So it kind of looked like Detroit might run away with it. So you're kind of getting a little bit back. And obviously the second, that safety, damn it, I was going to play the safety dance. Too busy. Mm-hmm. But that safety nutted the halftime, and it let the teasers go on. But that's just a little bit of the way that I've been betting, and the way that I'm focusing on things is I'm trying to weave things differently. I don't want to be pigeonholed into just point spread bets, because I think the point spreads are becoming a little bit too arbitrary for whatever reason. The coaching decisions, there's too many bad coaching decisions. There's too many crazy things. Look at how that Tennessee game goes over yesterday. I mean, for gosh sakes, look how the safety happened last night with Detroit. There's so many goofy things going with all the 2-point conversions, the increased frequency of field goals. So many other things are making these point spreads just more random. And I don't know if you feel the same way, but I don't want to play point spreads as often as I used to.
Okay, so my bold thought here is that's the value of this show. That's the number one value of the show. You have your perspective on how you're doing things and my perspective on how you're doing things. And I'm not changing. I bet like 95% of my bets are straight bets, and the rest are either little money line parlays supporting a straight bet, or an occasional over under, which is still a straight bet as well. So you have your handicapping where you're managing leverage and hedging and so on. And mine is still based on power ratings, matchup analysis, and situational factors. And until the bottom caves in, I don't think it's caved in. I mean, the strategy I've used for 40 years, I'm still going to use that snail approach of point spread, point spread, point spread. Now, what I'll say is that I agree completely that certain numbers are far more important than they used to. And where you didn't really care whether you got a 5 or a 5.5 or a 2 and a 2.5, that, throw that out the way. I mean, 10 years ago, all you cared about was 3 and 7, at least all I cared about. Is it 3? Is it 7? How do I get there? The buying was easier and so on. Now, you have to care about 2. You have to care about 5. You have to care about 8 even when somebody misses a 2-point conversion and stuff like that. There's so many different numbers that come into play, and it is scary. There's no question about that. But it's still, as a fundamental handicapper, I'm always going to look for the straight model as a judge as to whether I'm right on a team or wrong on a team.
Yeah, and that's funny that you phrase it that way, because I'm using that as a guide also. So that's kind of strange when you think about it, that I'm using a model that is based off of the point spread, but I don't want to use the point spread as often as I want. So I don't know where the logic is. I like this question. One thing that I didn't say is it's really important that while there's oftentimes I'm designing a flow where I intend on maybe coming back, like I did last night with Seattle, it's critical to remember that whatever you're doing, that bet in itself as a standalone wager has a positive expectation / utility value to you. So I hope that answers the question. I don't feel I'm sacrificing any ROI because that's an entirely new bet. I treat it as an entirely new bet, but I can coincidentally put it within another bet. And the beautiful thing about when you do that is you're guaranteed one leg wins. So you're automatically advancing a leg. of a parlay or a teaser if they're intersecting. So, and if you're doing if you're able to get positive EV on both sides, well, then you're kind of, it's not all that unusual to be able to hit both of them. So that's what I'm trying to do. I mean, it's, usually you're looking for a lead. I mean, when I took the Lions end of things, the Lions were -3.5, and I'm betting the Lions money line at that level. And I knew Seattle was going to go over 4 and that there was going to be a 14.5 available on Monday. So if you're able to know where the market's going to move and you can kind of look ahead and say, well, I'm going to have this, and that's going to be a positive EV number and a teaser to come back on. Well, then now I'm going to try to put myself in a position where I have more in play on that final game. So it doesn't always.
I like the question too, because it reminds me of something that I've said in the past, and that's every bet a person makes should take into account ROI. And there's different ways to take into account. If you want to bet a game at 3, what's your expected return on investment? Percentages, how much of the time are you going to win? If the bet is only that you're getting 2.5, how does that change your ROI? Because you're not getting the 3. So a certain percentage of the time the game's going to hit on 3. If you're betting a tease or a parlay, or if you're hedging or so on, what's the percentage based on whatever data you're using that play is going to hit? And it can be somewhat subjective. I understand that, but you better be thinking about these things. If you have a running back, even in a player prop, where the number is 45.5 at one book and 48.5 at another book, it changes the ROI, because there's a chance that this person lands on 46, 40, 7, 48. Maybe it's 1 out of 20 or 1 out of 50, but it changes your ROI depending on what you bet. So my advice is, when you're tailing somebody, when somebody gives out a play and you can't get the exact same odds, or maybe you're laying 115 and somebody else is giving you that play at -110, it changes your ROI. And I think that internal discussion has to be made before you pull the trigger on a bet.
Yeah, it's important. It's important to know data history. It's important because, as I've mentioned before, not all Wongs. There's a lot of people that'll chirp and ridicule people for the teasers that they make. Oh, teasers are sucker bets. Well, then why, if teasers are sucker bets, well, why the hell is everybody making it harder and harder to place them? Why can you not buy a 120 teaser in Vegas anymore? When people tell you can't tease through 0, you're an idiot. No, you're the idiot. And yes, you can tease through 0. And when people tell you all you got to do is go through the 3 and the 7, do the Wongs. No, you don't, because there's some Wongs that are negative EV. So there's a lot of misinformation out there. You've got to do your work. It's not easy. It takes a lot of work. And it just needs to be said. There's a lot of misinformation out there.
Yeah. I have just a couple more week 4 observations before we move forward, or before I move forward. The Taysom Hill injury was critical to the Saints.
Yeah.
The Dennis Allen thing, where he doesn't get creative. He has Taysom Hill and he uses him in such a way, and then they went so vanilla the rest of the way. When he was out, what a difference that made. And the Saints are wasting opportunities. Similarly, as noted in the chat, the Jags, I mean, there's something wrong with the Jags. We knew that before, but how many times did they have a chance to put that game away? They're trying a fake field goal. They're stopped in the red zone. They're kicking all these field goals. Eventually, Houston, which, Chris, you pointed out, Houston's not all there right now, yet they have a win that they shouldn't have had week 1 against Indy, and they have a win week 4 that they shouldn't have had against Jacksonville, 2 divisional wins. I'm anointing Houston as the winner in that division, because they're going to get better. They're not going to get worse. And these other teams have serious issues. Houston really stole 2 games when they were the most vulnerable. And even though they're not playing on all cylinders, those are big things. Another point I want to make, no regrets passing on Cincinnati in the Cincinnati-Carolina game. I think that was one of your plays. Congratulations. I just think with Cincinnati's defense in general, be careful of them moving forward because the back door is open until they fix that defense. I would rather take points with Cincinnati right now than laying points. These are just casual observations that I have. Even though Chicago was a gigantic play for me, I came away impressed with the Rams. I don't want to understate enough how much Matthew Stafford means to this team. You know Matthew Stafford very well. He had no wide receivers to throw to. You can't even name a guy. Tutu Atwell is his go-to wide receiver now. And there's his tight end Higbee hasn't played it down. His offensive line is banged up. And yet the Rams were competitive in that game. Hats off to the Rams in that particular game. And one final observation, and this is indisputable. Sorry, everybody. Nathaniel Hackett is the worst offensive coordinator in the NFL. I didn't play the game. I didn't have any interest in the game. All I could tell you is for the Jets to score 9 points is inexcusable.
Yeah, it's amazing. I did mention last week that Denver on the money line was worth a look because my model had Denver better than the Jets. It's amazing. I believe Nick's pass for 60 yards and gets
60 total yards all by himself.
Yeah, so just bizarre. And Cincinnati was in a situation with Dallas and the Lions, which basically indicated you could actually bet the alternate high line on them, and I took them, all three of them minus the 7.5, and some on the minus 10.5. And I also did. This keeps on happening. When you guys are looking through if you guys look at alternate lines, I found the minus 10 on Cincinnati for the same price as the minus 10.5 at the same book. So. And they had the same thing on a couple of other numbers too. I'm telling you, I see this every single week. You can find in the alternate lines, you can find key numbers that are priced better than they should be, or at the same price, you can find a better half a point at the same price as the key number, if that makes any sense. So take a look at those. So if you wanted to lay the 10.5 and you were getting plus 200, they've got the minus 10 plus 200. You don't have to lay that extra half point. I ended up pushing on the Cincinnati, so it was a godsend.
If you're quick enough, when a line moves because a service hits it or an over-under moves a point and a half or something like that, if you go into that game, you could take let's say the line moved from 4 to 5. You can actually get a better price at one of the other numbers because they're moving the main line and they're not moving the alternate lines. It takes them a few minutes to move the other lines. Exactly.
Houston, we knew something was wrong with them. I mean, Jacksonville, for the coach to be surprised that he's catching flack enough where they're questioning his job. How out of touch do you have to be that you're surprised to be asked that question? You're 0-4. I have them rated pretty darn low. But that's one of the reasons why I wanted the money line parlay with Houston, because I can't trust them, But the other side of the coin, though, to your point, Ron, where they may win that division, good teams find a way to win those bad games. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of good teams that start off a season, like Houston. Well, not as bad as Houston has started, but like Houston has started, where they'll pick it up later on, and maybe they can. But Trevor Lawrence has lost 8 or 9 games in a row. That's just inexcusable.
Yeah, it's not the he should have moved them into the end zone. I mean, everybody gets blamed for that.
I want to answer this question: is why you're going to see teams when they're down 14 or when they're down 8, or no, when they're down 7. They'll go for the 2-point conversion at that. What was that situation? They were down 14.
They were down 14, scored a touchdown.
They're at 8. So they can't lose any points. They can still tie the game the next possession, but it's better to know what you have to do ahead of time. So you're supposed to do the same thing at other numbers also. You're supposed to really do it at 4 also. And you're going to see teams start do it. That's going to be the next phase, is where teams start going for 2 on 4, believe it or not. So because, one of the reasons being that you are in control of whether you're going to need that field goal or more anyway, but that field goal can win it for you, and you know what you need to do. And especially based on the type of opponent you're playing, it may behoove you to know that ahead of time, because it applies pressure on the other team. There's a whole bunch of dynamics that indicate that you're better off going for 2 at these goofy numbers.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on that point, especially one of the last points you said. Know your opponent. This is situationally driven. If it's the Jets against, Denver, you shouldn't go for 2 ever, because you can barely get it into the end zone, with those teams. But you're going against a Lion defense that has obviously some flaws on the back end right now. And you have a coach. This is kind of an unsung thing. Seattle hired Ryan Grubb as their offensive coordinator. He was with the University of Washington last year, and you saw what kind of video game numbers that school put up. He's bringing some NCAA concepts to Seattle. And Geno Smith and the offense, what did they have? 38 first downs, a record for a losing team in a game. And Geno Smith threw for almost 400 yards. It's okay to go for 2 in a high-scoring game from 14-8. And I think Ryan Grubb's new line of thinking and the way he's spreading receivers out, he's got 3 receivers that are combined for 67 catches, I think, in 4 games. This is a dynamite offensive unit that Seattle is starting to put together. So it's really a good situation for them to be going for 2. Now they have to fix their defense a little bit.
Yeah, you have to remember something. The NFL overtime rules are garbage. So why would you leave anything to a coin flip? So if you want to avoid overtime, you want to avoid overtime with certain teams, because you may not see the ball. You have the ball. You want to put yourself in control, and you control your own destiny. Why would you want to put yourself in a position where you might not see the ball again?
Yeah. We saw it already in one of the overtime games. The other team didn't see the ball. And if you've got a high scoring team and you played already 3 hours of football, that defense being on the field, you're not going to see the ball.
I think that's about it for last week.
Yeah, I think so. Fascinating week in a lot of different ways, and a lot of observations that needed to be made. I thought it was a good recap.
Did you see how that Tennessee game ended?
Yeah, I did see how it ended.
I was in the middle of in-game the Lions. That was just a mess, and I was watching the Miami game on my phone. I don't understand. Miami got safetied, and then they punt the ball away. They screwed up an onside kick, right?
Yeah, well, nobody really knows the rules when you're have your punter in to do that, and because there's new rules and you have to actually do this punt inside some sort of weird zone or whatever before you could pick it up. I mean, I thought it was so confusing and so anti-football to me that.
Well, I don't understand. I always understood in a safety, you're free punting all the way to the other side of the field. I'm like, okay, the total's safe.
You could always onside kick. You can always onside kick. People never do it, but you can always. It's actually a good thing. I'm amazed. I've seen it in college a couple of times. This would be something to do all the time. If you're stuck in your own territory down 4, I would take an intentional safety and onside kick with less than 2 minutes to go, because you got 96 yards to go. Whether it's 4 or 6, you still need a touchdown. I do not understand why teams do not take an intentional safety at that point. You have a better chance of recovering an onside kick than going 96 yards.
Okay. Onward and upward. Divisional matchup, Tampa Bay, Atlanta. First Thursday night football for the new coaching crew of Atlanta. Any thoughts on this game?
None so far, really. The line is near my number, so I don't have any problem with that. I'm just starting to take a look at my stat sheet information. Once again, we have an Atlanta team that has 1 sack per game. It's a broken record. I mean, do I have to actually move to Atlanta and be at their gate, their parking lot gate every week and say, hey, draft a pass rusher, draft a pass rusher? I mean, 1 per game is inexcusable, and they are going to be an incomplete team until they fix that.
What offshore book do I find? Alternate lines that are useful. Well, obviously Pinnacle, which is tough to get. Canadians, people living outside the U.S. or are have access. Pinnacle has good ones. Bookmaker has a couple. They're usually not that good. Heritage has good alternate lines, I believe. Ron?
I was kicked out of Heritage and moved to their sister book, Bet 105, but they still use that same alternate line format where you can find value.
Trying to they're kind of hit and miss, frankly, and even ones that have crappy, like if you go in there once, and they may have crappy ones, once in a blue moon, they'll have some real gold for you. When I'm looking through the main U.S. books, I actually get pissed. They're so bad sometimes, but I still get lines there some way, somehow. I mean, I go in there for, at the beginning of a day, and I'm getting pissed. I'm like ready to tweet out something, and it's just unbelievable. But somehow I find stuff.
There's a point in the Joey makes a point. Are we actually judging Knicks on 4 starts? And I think that's relatively valid. We shouldn't judge anybody on 4 starts because it's a new situation. They're trying to learn how to use them. They're keeping them out of harm's way or trying to. They're obviously offensively challenged right now. They don't have that go-to tight end, in my opinion, that every rookie quarterback needs. And I keep harping on that every year. But you have to improve your tight end group when you have a rookie quarterback because he needs a bigger target, a guy with a bigger frame. Now, Nix is older. He had 6, 7, 33 years in college or whatever, so he should adapt a little bit faster, and he shouldn't be as flustered in the NFL game. So that's still an area where I think you could ding him a little. But a 4-game sample size for a rookie quarterback, I agree. You don't want to overjudge him.
I don't have much on that game at this point. We've had a lot of inquiries on this Minnesota Jets games. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm trying to wrestle in my head what happens in this game. They're going to England. We know what happens when Jacksonville goes to England. It's their home away from home. Last year, they played Buffalo. Buffalo was in an incredibly poor situation last year and so on and so forth. So I'm just trying to think, first of all, Aaron Rodgers is a veteran. Sam Darnold is a relative veteran, but he's new to being the guy on a team. Is there any advantage or disadvantage to that? And is that advantage negated because Aaron Rodgers is off a disappointing performance? So his mindset is not really on, hey, I've got some swagger right now. The Jets have no swagger. So I don't know if there's any advantage that way. Statistically, we know that Minnie is going to put a lot of pressure on Aaron Rodgers because Denver tried to put pressure on Aaron Rodgers, and I think that's what you have to do on Aaron Rodgers. No real other tidbits right now, but a very interesting game that I'll be looking at closely the rest of the week.
Well, the problem is that Aaron and the coach are arguing about pace of play, and Aaron wants to drag it out as long as possible. And we know from experience that if that happens with Minnesota is going to blitz them, and it's not going to work. What Green Bay was able to do is they sped up the tempo of the game and that negated the blitzing, and Minnesota had to do things differently. And Green Bay was able to find success. What's Aaron going to do about it?
Yeah, they're walking like on eggshells in this organization. If not for Aaron Rodgers, I think Nathaniel Hackett may not have been retained to start the year, and it could have been an in-season firing for him. But you don't want to get Aaron Rodgers mad. And then if they make changes to the coaching staff, I don't know what his relationship exactly is with Robert Saleh, but he's on thin ice too, because while his defense is the heart of the team, they're not doing anything offensively, and he's the leader of the entire team. He's not just the leader of the defense. So I think there's a dynamic that's not working in New York.
Yeah, it's pretty hard when your player is more experienced and knowledgeable about the game than the head coach, probably.
Yeah.
So
there's a comment by Russell. It says that if he's immobilized by the injuries, just last week after his performance against New England, everybody anointed him as back. That's Rodgers. That's vintage Rodgers, and now he's back to square one again. It's a whole work in progress to gain confidence following an Achilles injury. But I don't know if he's back or not back or whatever. I think it's more than that.
I think it's just critical to kind of try to evaluate mentally what's going on with teams sometimes. And it's we talked about this last week where Salah wants the high five and Rodgers is kind of like, what are you doing? I mean, when they did get the win, I said, well, they're confident, but I worry about the type of confidence they have, because I didn't like their attitude. It just rubbed me the wrong way. And sure enough, it blew up in their face. It just seemed nuts. I didn't realize this, but the Jets with this coach are 2-6 with extra rest. So, that's very telling.
Yeah, and that's not a real exciting stat, because it means there's a preparation issue.
Yeah. And I think the Vikings have been to London and had success, haven't they? I thought somebody in that.
Yeah,
Twitter.
I heard that too, but it's not like they go every year or anything. So I think it's more telling if you're 0-2 in London and you got beat by 24 points each time or whatever, then you're struggling for an answer. It's nice to be in that kind of mindset. Look, Minnie and Washington are my two surprise teams this year, based on my preseason analysis. It's not that I was down on Minnie. It's that they're performing at this level that I didn't expect. I was not down on Minnie. I was not down on Washington. It's the fact that they're doing it so early, that through 4 games that they're on such a high. That's what's surprising to me.
Well, I mentioned last week that I was a believer in the Vikings, and I listed the reasons why. Washington, I was not a believer, and I'm still not a believer. I'm impressed by what they've done, but I firmly believe the Vikings we will be seeing in postseason, and if they keep playing like this, they're going to go deep. I'm not convinced about that at all with Washington still yet. Hey, pat on the back, you've done great so far, but keep it up.
Yeah, but hats off to them for changing the culture.
But this is you see Minnesota on the bottom of the screen, and it looks like a home team. They're not the home team. The game's in London.
Yeah.
The look-ahead line was the Jets -2.5, which, in my opinion, that's the problem with evaluating games on look-ahead lines, because that was wrong. That line was wrong when it was, I probably should have bet it, but it was wrong. There's no doubt it was wrong. And, so if you're going to use a line that's wrong as a basis for, the line's moved all this way. Well, who cares? It was wrong. So it doesn't mean squat to me in most cases, or in a lot of cases. Sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't. I guess my point is it just doesn't always matter.
And I think early in the season, there's more variability anyway.
Yes, absolutely. Carolina and the Bears. Carolina hit with more injuries. The Bears, they still look like crap. I mean, their defense is doing the job, but what's up with that offense? They actually said Caleb had his best game.
Yeah, Caleb didn't do. I thought Caleb played well. I think it was his best game. The biggest issue for me in this game, because I do have some notes that favor Carolina, but the biggest issue for Carolina is, we're talking about Andy Dalton, which has really changed the offense, 60 points in the last 2 games. However, Carolina's defense is missing 4 or 5 parts from last year, including Brian Burns. And even though they retained the defensive coordinator, which I thought was a good move for continuity's sakes, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done defensively. They just don't have the bodies. So I don't know. Chicago is not the most dynamic offense. They're learning on the fly as well. But Carolina, personnel-wise, this is just not a great defense. It's not the Carolina defense that we've seen in the last couple of years.
I mean, there's a game that there's no way in hell I'm laying 3.5. I'd have to get involved in the money line somehow if I like the Bears.
Yeah. I think it's actually it's an interesting line. Won't get into quite that detail, but I agree with you in terms of not a perfect spot for the Bears.
That's what I wanted to comment on. Let's see if I can read my scribble. Yeah, did you see what was up with DJ Moore? There was an incident where he was just completely separated. He didn't walk in or out with the team. And there seemed to be some strife. And then there was some question on whether he had made a mistake on the field and such.
Didn't see that. It's news to me, so I don't know that.
Okay. Something to just look into more.
Baltimore, Cincinnati, and one of those famous games in a conference or in the division that's just going to be crazy.
I think you kind of hit it there. Is obviously Buffalo's defense is just home cooking for the Ravens, and the Bengals, their defense sucks, but they have the potential to get a few players back. If they can get the middle shored up, then that could slow down the Ravens kind of a bit. Because Baltimore had their way with Buffalo's defense, but Cincinnati, if they can get Hendrickson and a couple, one other person back down the middle, well, then that's going to make that game a little bit different. Because otherwise, you can score at will on the Bengals pretty much.
Yeah, a fascinating game, and at first glance, a tough one to handicap. But this is a good time to talk about Baltimore and the whole dynamic about betting the second half when they're up double digits, which you and I have had. I don't know what my record is, but my record is, even though I lost this Sunday night, it's a really good, really, really good record. The thing of it is, I tried to do some preliminary data, and I just got too swamped. I have to do some Ivy League work, believe it or not. And so that takes precedent right now. But Baltimore in standalone situations, and I'm trying to parse out home versus road, Monday night, Thursday night, Sunday night, they don't lose leads as much as they do in regular Sunday games. And I'm trying to get the exact data, and I don't have it right now, but I may have walked into a situation that wasn't the best situation. So I want to bring that out and flesh it out a little bit more. Just a word out there that maybe we should just look at regular traditional games when we're fading Baltimore in the second half. But the flip side of this, Chris, is something I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I'm going to put words in my mouth. We may be missing something with this Baltimore thing. Why aren't we betting Baltimore in the first half if we're so sure that they're getting leads right out of the gate, because they're such a really good team that they continually lead in the first half?
Ron, you got to stop. You got to stop using logic with me, okay?
I feel like a light went on at the wrong time, and I said, "Wait a second. I've missed a situation that's probably even better than the other situation."
Yeah, why are we waiting for second
Baltimore? We should be taking Baltimore in the first half because we know how good they are. We have an issue with how Harbaugh manages games, especially at end of first half, and end of second half situations. Why aren't we managing the fact that Baltimore is a damn good team and we are not taking them early in games? And that light just went on, and I'm thinking, wow, wasted 3 years of this.
I think I'm starting to get the feeling that, we kind of felt Baltimore was going to be down, and I think with the way they started, we might have settled in our thinking that they were down. They may not be down, and I realize it's way too early to judge. And I guess that's my only point is I'm not going to believe that they cannot really be a real strong team. And I'm not going to discount the possibility of them falling back. But I think they've demonstrated that it's more likely that they're still a very strong team.
They're in my top 3 power rating, and they achieved that based on last week's effort to move them into that range. And their roster is loaded. I don't think we've ever had a question about their roster.
I was happy at least Cincinnati covered for me last week. My numbers were very solid on that game, so I'm hoping that they're solid on this game. The Houston Bills, for the life of me, I'm in my head. Houston's not a good team right now. They're just average. They're just your 9-17 or what do they have? So 9-18. Nah, they're like a 10-18. That's what I have them at best. And then they're facing the Bills, and I'm sitting there thinking, well, the Bills should be favored by a couple. I was kind of surprised that Houston was favored a little bit, but my numbers came out at dead even on these two teams, and there's just something that bothers me about that. But I guess they are even.
Yeah, I came out. I used the line Houston -1, so I'm not surprised because of Buffalo off the shorter, playing on the Sunday night, this and that, whatever. But my power ratings picked Buffalo by 1. So we're kind of in that same range. If you have this coming Monday's paper, and Josh Allen has no turnovers, apparently he's 18-0 when he doesn't turn the ball over in his career. At least that's some TV stats. So Houston is not flying on all cylinders. We both touched upon that. You've touched upon it more than I have. This is a possible good spot for Buffalo if we get what we need out of Josh Allen. But Houston is also a pretty good team in terms of their pass rush. Will he force Josh Allen into turnovers? So I need to know what Josh Allen shows up.
That's true. I just feel that Buffalo's the better team, and we're just kind of surprised about that. Well, I guess they are rated the better team since it's Pick'em at home in Houston, but home field's
I agree.
We got to know what's going on with Taylor and Richardson in this Indianapolis game.
Yeah, the good news is, usually in divisional games, I have a lot of good situations and some other things, some general stuff and whatever. I have virtually nothing in this game, which really thrills me. So I'm not going to look at it until later in the week.
Yeah, I think we just need more information before we really know. I think Jacksonville is in tatters at this point. Do you think? How bad do you think this team is? Do you think they've just it's a coaching issue? Do you think they can get back on track, or is this indicative of reality for them going forward?
I think part of football, part of anything, is the mental game, and they're losing the mental game right now. I mean, there's, all these guys are in the NFL. They have talent. So, you can look at matchup advantages and disadvantages. The biggest issue with the Jags is they're mentally not thinking like winners. I mean, they should have dominated in the red zone. They should have had a quiet confidence. We've got Trevor Lawrence. We've got all these receivers. Why are we not winning in the red zone? I realize their tight end is out, but that's one player. It's a tight end. They should be able to compensate. The other issue has always been with the GM of Jacksonville. They just don't have enough supplementary bodies on the team, especially defensively, because of such poor drafting. The combination of those things, I had them as a middle-of-the-road team. I don't have their power rating in the bottom 7, 8, 9. I just think they're squandering opportunities, and part of it is coaching and mental.
Oh, I just wanted to find I don't have my model, my
Yeah,
spreadsheet.
Ingram's important. And he could have put him over the top in some of these close games as a go-to red zone guy, but there's more issues.
Oh, come on. I just want to see where I have them rated.
Yeah, I'm trying to look. One, two.
What do you bottom 3 defense? Yeah, I have them third from the bottom also, actually. So,
Yeah, I have them higher than that, but there's so many lookalike teams that.
On defense.
Oh, on defense?
Yeah.
Yeah, on defense, they're bottom 5. They're not that great on offense either, but. Adams to Steelers, that would be a nice fit.
I just don't. I just don't see the. Where's Jacksonville's offense? Yeah, it's. Yeah. I'm not sure Jacksonville's the better team here, and they're giving 3.
Yeah, I have them pretty much dead even, but we don't know, who's going to quarterback there. I thought Indy did a nice job keeping Joe Flacco out of harm's way, not throwing the interceptions that could have cost them a game that they were playing fairly well against Pittsburgh in a great situation. So, yeah, I hope to pass on this game.
I hope to pass. Miami and the Patriots.
Yeah, question for you. In your overall team ratings, where is Miami?
Ugh, Jesus, where do you have them? I'm ashamed.
I'm not ashamed. Right now, I have them 32nd.
Wow.
I mean, I can't believe that.
I cannot believe I do not have them in the bottom 5.
I am just shocked the way the ratings came out for me. Now, it's circled because of injuries. They just lost Phillips again on the defensive end and so on. So it's possible that I'm down. The most I could put them, and it's just a shock to me. And I'm curious, anybody who wants to comment on this, either here or if you're watching this later, put it in the YouTube comments because Chris and I will look at them. Does anybody have Miami rated higher than 30th right now?
I do.
Okay. But how?
I'm not going to tell you.
Okay. That's good enough.
But they feel way too high.
They're averaging 11 points a game. They're vaunted.
Well, they're dead last offensively.
Yeah. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And that's their bread and butter.
Where do you have them rated defensively, though?
Defensively, they're not getting to opposing quarterbacks. They're still bottom 8 in pass defense percentage. They're playing better against the run. They're relatively decent against the run. I would probably have them in the area of 20th to 22nd defensively.
See, that's where we're off is somehow I have them rated higher defensively. That's what's skewing my numbers.
Yeah, I'll take another look because there are some really bad defensive teams. So yeah, I'm not going to have them higher than I think 17 or 18, regardless if I really look through.
Do we have to? I don't want to talk about this game. I just don't care.
Miami, New England, yeah, skip it.
Cleveland and Washington. Well, Cleveland's due to they could get back up, 4 key players this week. Even if they get a couple of them back, they'll be a little bit different. It just seems like the perfect spot to be on Cleveland. This could be Washington's high point. Last week is Cleveland's low point. But again, Watson is not at fault in this situation. Watson, they keep on showing him doing really stupid stuff and throwing flutter balls, but that's not him. He's got receivers dropping balls. He's got linemen not doing their job. How do you see this matchup?
19 sacks against him. I thought he threw with a little bit more convention against conviction. Let's try that word. A little bit more conviction against the Raiders, but he's still missing spots. It's a combination of the fact that where's his confidence level? It really hasn't been there. I mean, my question for everybody is, what do you do with Watson? Because it's just getting worse and worse and worse, and they sacrifice so much in this organization. When do you say to him, we're going to bench you if this doesn't get better? I will say this, Cleveland is in probably one of the best spots that you can have this week in this game. So when I do the matchup analysis, I'll see if I could validate that. But there is a path to a Cleveland victory this week.
And what do you think that path is?
Well, I'll do the matchup analysis to confirm it. But there is a mental path and a situational path to victory.
No, I agree. The handicap to cap has the solution right here. You tie him to the P. Diddy case.
Well, see, that's thinking out of the box.
Yeah, that's good thinking there. I'm sure Brown's management's been working on that feverishly.
I don't think you have that on any other show, so that could be breaking news.
Raiders and Broncos. Adams is available. Adams interviewed. Seems like he's got one foot out the door. It's public that he's on the table. How do they go on to Denver this week after they seem to be an up and down team? Okay, they won last week. Isn't it their turn to lose this week?
Yeah, I think Denver has not won the last 8 or so games in the series. So it's
really,
yeah, it's been kind of crazy. So the Vegas isn't afraid to go in there and know with confidence they can do something. And that has to account for a little something. Vegas knows it can win at Denver, and it's not going to be snowing as far as I know in Denver. So, they get a good situation there. They're playing but they're probably going to play relatively great defense against the run because Denver's not running the ball with authority right now. So it's an interesting matchup game. I'd love Denver to win this game. It's amazing if Denver wins this game. They're 3-2. They're almost to that 5-win threshold for season wins, and yet they're playing like garbage offensively.
Oh, I've got to subscribe to go back more than 5, but they've lost 5 in a row. The Raiders have won 5 in a row. I don't know after that.
City by the Bay confirmed it. Says Ron is right. Raiders have won 8 in a row against the Broncos. So from a divisional matchup point, the confidence level is high with Vegas. Offhand, I don't remember having tremendous situational factors. I can't tell you matchup analysis wise. The line of scrimmage in pass protection is decidedly one-sided in favor of Denver.
Pass protection?
Yeah.
Well, it has to be. Jeez.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably the biggest disparity on the board this week.
Do we have an update on Crosby? This is going to be we don't find out till Saturday type situation, I imagine, right?
I would say he will play because he will not miss 2 games in a row. It's not in his DNA.
That's true. Arizona, San Francisco. San Francisco played pretty well for the scrimmage last week. I was urinating my money out into the wind, blowing back in my face on the Patriots. So that was no fun. It was one of those games that you knew you had no hope 5 minutes in.
Yeah,
which is frustrating.
Yeah, a good stay away game last week. This is one of those situations where if you like Arizona, you hold your nose and play them. They're not going to get any real public support. It's going to have to be some sharps kind of going in on Arizona. There's some reasons to like Arizona, but obviously their coaching staff in year 2 hasn't seemed to evolve from year 1 to year 2. So I don't know. I need to think more about this particular game, but it reminds me of 2 or 3 other games on this board, Cleveland included, where you say, well, you're getting Arizona at the low point. Are they worth it? Yes or no?
So, Purdy's better than Goff. Do you think Purdy's better than Goff?
No, I think Purdy's system is ideal for him. I think Purdy's a fine quarterback, but Goff is better. And Goff is just not turnover prone right now.
So it's pretty well known that Goff was the first NFL quarterback to throw 100%, 18 for 18. Were you aware of that, Ron?
Yes, I was. There was somebody who went 1 for 1 in a game in 1942. So take that as another guy who was perfect.
So he throws 18 for 18. He throws for an average of 11 point something yards. He throws for at least 1 touchdown, and he had 0 interceptions. So how does he not get a perfect passer rating for the game?
Simple. Humans design the passer rating.
Yeah, I do have the information there. You have to have a minimum completion percentage of 77.5, average at least 12.5 yards per attempt, have 0 interceptions, and have a touchdown percentage of at least 11.875. Okay. I misspoke on it. So he had the 100% completion. He averaged 16.2 yards per attempt. He did not throw an interception. However, his 2 touchdown passes of 18 passing attempts produced a TD percentage of 11.1, not 11.87 required.
Yeah. No comment.
So no, Purdy's not better. In fact, Goff has by far the number 1 against the spread rating. I saw the numbers someplace, and it's just ridiculous how good they are. He's number 1 in the league by far. So he's doing what he says. He's always exceeding expectations. Packers Rams. I'm really excited about this game.
Oh, okay.
I was lying. I'm not.
Okay. I basically, because the Rams are beat up and Green Bay's beat up, I've kind of suspended my analysis on this game till later in the week, so I don't have much to say right now.
Who's the better team?
Actually, my power ratings are circled for both teams, so it's extremely difficult to answer that question. I'd give Green Bay probably a small nod.
Okay. Yeah, I've got Green Bay better here. I think as you mentioned, Stafford's working miracles at this point. So I don't know how long those can continue. And I don't think you can fault Love. I think Love will show up this week. You get these quarterbacks that sat out a few weeks and they get rusty, in that first game back. So I expect a better performance from him.
Yeah, he's a gunslinger type, and it got the better of him last week. And every once in a while, you're going to see that out of Love. But you're also going to see, potentially great comeback that almost happened last week. So you live with both.
I forget, what did the Lions do at the 2-minute warning?
I don't know, but the trick plays have to stop. They don't need to do it. Just because that one was successful, I don't understand.
Well, Goff had he caught that touchdown pass. That was
but why do that?
To score touchdowns.
What if Goff's tackled and he injures his leg?
Well, then you've got the hooker.
Yeah. Okay.
There's always a hooker in the background.
St. Brown was interviewed after the game. And what a great speaker, by the way, very level-headed. But he says they have so many trick plays in their arsenal, you haven't seen them all yet. I don't want to see any of them. If a team's good, don't resort to that.
I think when you're good and the other team is focusing as much as they possibly can, when you throw them those monkey wrenches, it just compounds the problem. So I don't have a problem with it.
Best one I ever saw, and I predicted it, was the Pittsburgh-Seattle Super Bowl game. There was a very controversial penalty against Seattle in that game. Actually, there were probably 2 or 3 in that game. And Seattle was just so distraught. And after a lengthy delay and stuff like that, they got, what was his name? Somebody help me in the chat. They ran a wide receiver pass that worked beautifully for a 70-yard touchdown pass. I can't remember the name. I know he played wide receiver and quarterback at Indiana, but Pittsburgh and Cower just used the perfect time to put that play in. I think it was Cower as opposed to Tomlin. And I can't remember his name, somebody, but that was the perfect timing for when you try a trick play, when the other team is so convinced that there was such a bad penalty, they were so disoriented, they had no stomach for the trick play. And it was absolutely the most perfect call I've seen.
I agree 100% with that.
There it is. Thank you, Justin. Anton Randall.
Oh, they didn't try.
It was a beautiful play.
The safety happened at the end of the game, not before the half.
Yeah.
And you weren't here at the beginning of the show. I talked about that safety, and I didn't have my safety dance music.
Yeah, that's true. Giants, Seattle off Monday night, but now they're at home.
Yeah, what's the deal with the receiver? Why did I forget his name for the Giants?
Their lead receiver?
Yeah.
Is he? I know he got banged up or had possible concussion on the next to last play of the game, Neighbors. But they have 10 days between Thursday and whatever. So for the Giants' sake, they hope he gets cleared because it's 10 days and not 7.
I don't have an update on is he playing or not, or what is the severity?
I believe he will play because the concussion doctors have ample time to figure that out. But it's not going to be decided until Thursday or Friday.
I'll tell you one thing. You had 4, 5, 6 players missing for Seattle. I think that Seattle is pretty darn good, and that Walker is really impressive. And I think Geno Smith is impressive. I don't want to see Seattle again. I'll tell you that.
The one thing about Seattle, and we touched upon it, one or both of us last week, is that they hadn't faced a really decent quarterback so we didn't know anything about their defense until they faced Jared Goff. Of course, I don't know if we know anything now because they're going to face Daniel Jones. So, I mean, it's probably a good situation for them to face Daniel Jones. But Seattle's defense, you have to worry about them at least a little bit, in my opinion.
I didn't have a problem with them trying to throw out of the end zone because I wanted them to get safetied. So I was very happy. With that offensive line, you should be able to get a little protection or get rid of the ball fast enough. I don't have a problem with it. It wasn't going to cost them the game. So,
yeah, but you and I both know that Dan Campbell could shore up the whole decision making a little bit more.
New Orleans and the Chiefs. Now, there's a pretty good game. I'm looking forward to this one.
What about Dallas and Pitt?
Oh, yeah. Surprising. I mean, I would have never thought but Pittsburgh's got to be the favorite here. They absolutely have to be. What do you think?
I made Pitt 29, 1.5 point favorite in this particular game, which would have been obviously surprising in August that this would happen. Pitt was able to score some in their last game against Indy. Indy's defense, not the same as Dallas's defense, however. You know, it's
Well,
funny. The NFC East is wide open all of a sudden.
yeah, isn't Washington's leading the division, right?
Washington's 3-1 with defensive flaws. Philadelphia has internal problems. Dallas has a
Mental
Jerry
problem.
Jones. Yeah, Dallas has a Jerry Jones problem and no running attack whatsoever. So they're one dimensional. And the Giants are the Giants, but somebody has to win the division.
Oh, now Devontae Adams informs the team that he prefers to be traded.
Wow. Is if that's actual words from his mouth.
Yes.
You know, wide receivers are a different breed in the NFL, always have been.
Well, we went through this crap with him last season, and then when the coaching change happened, oh, he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. I love playing with him, blah, blah, blah. And, 3 games in, he wants out again.
Yeah. Well, I've seen too many wide receivers. I mean, Tyreek Hill, you've got a situation with Tyreek Hill where he doesn't speak to anybody and he pouts and he's beating to his own drummer. This is a wide receiver issue around the league.
You know what? I'm going to tell you, and I could be wrong, but there's how in the hell can he not accidentally break any runs and contribute to that offense without Tua there? It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
How Miami has 0 offense all of a sudden makes no sense to me.
Well, I mean, Tua is a rhythm passer. They hit him in stride and whatever. Without Tua, they seem to be going with shorter routes more, and they think that they get the ball to him in safer situations that he could turn and run. But when they just get the ball out to him, there's going to be 2 guys converging on him. They have to somehow run the same offense and have a little bit more complexity with Tyreek Hill. He's better in space. You just don't want to give him the ball, 5 yards downfield and hope he breaks a tackle. You still have to move him around in space.
Saints Chiefs.
Yeah. The Chiefs again, winning by some kind of margin.
It seems like I get a lot of comments that the Saints are pretenders and that in last week's game brings them back to earth. And, for God's sakes, Atlanta didn't even score a touchdown and they win the game. So there's a little bad luck with the Saints involved in losing that game. I think I'm not saying the Saints are going to win the NFC, but I think that they're certainly a above average team.
Well, the Saints are held back by their head coach, there's no question. And the guy made a 58-yard field goal. Would the narrative be different if he misses the 58-yard field goal and the Saints are 3-1? We'd be talking completely different, even though clock management caused Atlanta to have enough time to even get into 58-yard field goal range. Cousins wasn't doing enough on that drive. We know Latimer could play when he's in the game defensively. The Saints are a very well-rounded team. But we know they're going to make mistakes from time to time. Probably lose to Kansas City on a Monday night, but Kansas City is going to be without Rashee Rice for at least the facility, the foreseeable future, and maybe a lot more than that. So they have to Band-Aid it together again, an extra day for New Orleans defense to probably design a game plan against Mahomes. Taysom Hill, again, will be an important part of the picture. Does he play? Does he not play? A lot of moving parts, Chris, in this game.
Yeah, and you're like, I mean, he's worse than that Arizona quarterback that kept getting hurt that you always used to pick on. That was good for 2.5 quarters.
Colt McCoy.
McCoy. I mean, he's the new
he had
Colt
nobody.
McCoy.
This is how we met talking about Colt McCoy, you and I, 14, 15 years ago. The fact that he couldn't last a quarter against Alabama when they had the lead 7-0 and driving, in the title game and stuff like that. Colt McCoy could have been a really, really good NFL quarterback if he had somebody else's body.
The one thing I do kind of like is I'm picking up market predictions better this week, I think. Somebody asked me what's going to go on with that Kansas City line, and I said it's going to go to 6, and then it's going to bounce back down, and it's done that twice. I think it could probably go back up to 6 again. I think people are going to want to take Kansas City.
Yeah, being a marquee standalone Monday night game, I think Kansas City will be bet at the end by the public. I need to make two shout outs now that we're talking about Kansas City. Let's give props to Ted, who told us that Kelsey was going to go over
It's
4.5
true.
receptions, which he did in the first half, apparently. Congratulations, Ted. We'll look for more of those in the future. And my long time friend, and Ted knows him very well too, John, went ahead and told me, he texted me as soon as he heard about Bosa. He said, Worthy is going to erupt in this game. He didn't quite have the over 100 yards that John predicted, but believe it or not, Worthy's over-under for receiving yards in that game was 39.5, which he exceeded on just one play, with the Chargers missing Derwin James and Joey Bosa. So congratulations to John for pointing out Worthy in space without two key Charger performers.
Yeah, I busted Ted's chops because he chirped a text message to me in the first and I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, Ted. You must be disappointed that you didn't take an alternate high number and you just had the regular payout."
Yeah, in college, you could ladder these guys. If you think they're going to get 50 yards, you can ladder them 60, 70, 80. It works for running backs all the time, by the way.
I think what's going to be a fascinating line is that London game. It is busting at the seams to hit 3 o'clock or 3. Every single book on my screen is at 2.5 minus 120, pretty much, except Circa, which is at 15. I don't know how that doesn't settle at 3, frankly.
There's a question about the Cowboys Steelers that's pertinent to the New York Jet mini game for me. If mini gets 3, I really think there'll be resistance and there'll be Jet action. And if Pittsburgh hits 3, I think there'll be resistance and we'll see Dallas action. So that's something I personally think to look for in line movement.
Yeah, I can't stomach seeing this Pittsburgh favored for some reason. But, you've got the two guys out for Dallas, Micah Parsons and Lawrence.
Yeah, and Parsons, the combination of the two is probably going to be worth more than a point to the spread, which is...
It seems so wrong to see that there. But, sometimes you just have to adjust to the new realities.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I mentioned this last week or the week before. This year, you're seeing more defensive players than normal being hurt. We always get the offensive players, whether it be wide receiver, running back, whatever, but we're seeing some very key defensive players missing time.
What is this one? Commanders or Broncos to win outright? What do you think?
I would, as not really much of a survivor player, just my internal pools and stuff like that, I would never recommend taking a team with defensive inefficiencies, and Washington has that. I could never recommend taking that kind of team. And the Broncos being 0-8 against Vegas, I'd probably look for somebody other than either one of those two, to be honest.
I mean, if I had to pick, I would take Washington, but good luck with that.
If I had to pick, I'd probably take Denver.
I think the 49ers will win, but who knows? At this Arizona, it's nagging me out. I don't know what it is, why they are playing as poorly. Do you have any pulse on why they're so poorly played this year?
It's funny because Kyler Murray's playing at or above expectations, and James Conner, the running back, is creating holes and he's moving the chains. So there's not really a problem offensively. The offensive line isn't great, but Kyler Murray is elusive. So I don't think it's an offensive problem, even though they shockingly only scored 14 points against Washington. It is a defensive problem. What are we looking at? Near 80% allowed versus the pass. And it was high even before Daniels lit it up with Washington. So this is a team where you're talking about who's better, Brock Purdy or Goff. Well, Purdy's going to look mighty impressive accuracy wise against Arizona's defense. This is again on Arizona to outscore San Francisco. I honestly think that Arizona has the weapons to put points up on San Francisco. But if San Francisco is going to be on all cylinders, I don't know how many times San Francisco will be punting in this game.
Well, I'm not going to have a straight play on that game, so that makes me feel better.
Yeah, I might.
Anything else?
I will tell you from beginning to end, I think we put a lot of good brainstorming into this session. So I hope viewers join in, add some comments on YouTube, recommend the show to others, buy all the products that we sponsor, which is pretty much nothing.
Metamucil?
Something. I don't know. I was going to say use vacuum cleaner. We could sell something like that. But good Tuesday session. More work to be done during the week.
I will be on Bet US tomorrow at noon with Jared and Steve, and then Thursday I'm going to be on with Ted. It'll be it'll just be the two of us. Remember the last show worked out okay, so
yeah, you guys did great. I won't be back in visible view until Friday. So everybody enjoy Cris and Ted on Thursday. I'm sure there's going to be great audio and stuff. And look out for an article this week and a couple of other things on my end.
I think he's going to have questions from Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes. So that's kind of nice. I mean, we get our personalized questions. So we do kind of like that. Props to Ted. Thank you. And I guess we're good to go. Well, the comments just all rolled in. There's too many of them. We'll see you guys later.